Well, it's no secret that spring is my favorite season of the year, and I love the spring wildflower season in particular, and there's certainly nobody better to give us some insight and a great garden tour of their garden than Paul Moore, who is a locally known gardening guru here in the Nashville area. Was in the nursery business for a long time and got started in native plants how long ago?
Well, next year it'll be 30 years. That's when we built our house here on the hill, and I wanted to experiment with just shade plants generally, but that's about the same time as when I discovered native plants just through hiking and being out in nature.
And so how much of your garden is native?
I'd say probably about 99%.
Wow. Well, Paul, your garden is full of all kinds of interesting plants. I mean, I see columbine in the background, which apparently reseeds itself.
It does, prolifically.
You know, of course, I'm a plant person first, and one of the first things I noticed when I walked up this morning was this stunning group of trilliums. Tell me a little bit about these and how you find growing trilliums in your garden.
Well, the Trillium is probably one of my favorite of all the wildflowers, and these are Trillium sulcatum, or I think they call them the Southern Trillium. And these are variants. They're normally a real deep red, and then these variants have all these variety and mixture of colors. And I just love the variety. You know, some Trilliums are fragrant, and here they're growing with the bishop's cap with the little white flowers. A lot of times you'll see those naturally occurring in nature like that.
So I know that having trilliums in the garden, especially among native plant enthusiasts, they're an important group of plants, but sometimes it makes people a little bit nervous also to see trilliums growing, and I think people should know that it's important to buy from reputable sources.
Well, you certainly want to buy from propagated sources. If you find them in little Ziploc bags at a big box store and they're $2.99, they're probably collected from the wild, so you want to avoid those. You know, it takes Trillium several years even to be of sellable size, so you know you expect to pay at least $10 or $15 a piece for those kind of Trilliums.
Sure.
And so from reputable garden centers or specialty mail order places.
Native plant nurseries that really specialize in the propagation of those kinds of plants.
Absolutely.
You know, one of the things I'm always looking for in my own garden are alternative ground covers, because I try not to plant English ivy and euonymus and anything that will climb a tree. I do have a little bit of pachysandra, but it doesn't climb, so it's sort of fair game. But you seem to be using one of your ferns as a ground cover.
This is a hay-scented fern, and I just love how it's colonized this area. It's only been in, I think this is the third year on it, and it just makes a solid mass of green. I love the textures and the way the wind plays off of it. And it's done remarkably well. It's actually coming up in the little pavers in between up there, so it really likes the spot.
So this is deciduous. It loses its leaves in the wintertime, but it obviously is coming up now in early April and will be there until frost, so you get 8 or 9 months of beauty out of it, and then in the winter the bed can just be cleaned up, but it's still there to hold the soil in place kind of on this slope.
Exactly.
Well, Paul, you have so many things to talk about. I mean, perennials and shrubs and all kinds of stuff, but let's start right here with this beautiful Fothergilla. Good plant all the way around for this area?
I love it. It's, you know, the bottle brush flowers early spring before the leaves come out, honey-scented flowers, fabulous fall color, has really nice branching pattern. It's just one of my favorite woody plants.
I like it too, and then right across the sidewalk from it, you have one of my favorite spring wildflowers, which is our little crested iris. I have a hard time growing this. Can you give folks, and me too, any tips about how to get this established?
Well, I seem to for a long time, but I put it on this little bank right here, and it's getting a little bit more sun, but I think the fact that it's on this little bank and the exposure is helping a lot as well.
And I've noticed when I do see it growing in the wild that a lot of times it is on a little bit of a slope. So if you can take those clues from, you know, nature and kind of recreate them in your own garden, then maybe you have more success. I also see growing through here some of our native gingers. Do you have more than one kind, or?
This is the deciduous ginger, which will just make a solid mat.
Right.
And I have some of the evergreen ginger a little further up the path, which I can show you.
All right. And then back toward the back a little bit, I see, you know, probably one of our most coveted wildflowers, which is the big white Trillium grandiflorum. Is that a hard plant to grow? Have you had any trouble getting it established?
It's just slow. That clump you're looking at over there is probably 10, 12 years old.
So not necessarily hard, you just have to be really patient.
Really patient with it.
Another favorite little wildflower of mine is this little Jacob's ladder, and it sort of tends to scatter itself around the garden.
It's a great border edge too, and it's got really nice foliage too.
So the little flowers, once they're finished, the flowering stalks just kind of die off on their own, and you have this nice little foliage left.
And I like even the little seed capsules are attractive for a long time.
And I see another plant here that you've been pretty successful with, it looks like, which is the northern maidenhair fern. And not everybody here in the South can grow that very well, but is this, you know, irrigated or anything like that?
Well, most of it's doing well is the fact that it's near this water basin full of moisture, and you know, it just stays pretty moisture because I'm always filling that up. So I think the moisture is a big factor there.
Now we're entering one of your favorite parts of the garden with one of your favorite plants. So tell me about this little kind of tree shrub combination.
Well, it's called the Leatherwood plant, Dirca palustris, and I first heard about it when hiking at Big South Fork. There's an area called Leatherwood Ford, and it's named after this plant. Has little yellow flowers in the early spring. It's already set fruit. You got berries that have already formed there now. You can see it's very flexible. You can actually tie a branch into a knot. Native Americans made bowstrings and sandals out of the fibrous bark. It's just a plant, and no pruning at all required. It just keeps a just beautiful shape.
Well, we've kind of come to this little end of the path, but I know there's a lot more garden to see in front of us, so let's keep going.
Sounds great.
So the garden has been here 30 years, and obviously there are some areas that are really well established where you have big masses of plants. Tell me about some of the plant communities and things that you have out in this larger area of the garden.
Well, this is the southwest side of the property, and it gets really dry here, so I just have the woodland path. Got easy maintenance plants like the Solomon seal, mayapple, the phlox, the woodland phlox, the varicata. Just let it just reseed, and whatever survives here survives.
Right, and a lot of our spring wildflowers are what we call ephemeral, which is kind of a fancy word for meaning that they go dormant in the summertime. What does that mean for you as far as maintenance of the garden and that sort of thing?
Well, I go dormant in the summer too. I tell people I'm a fair weather gardener. I like the garden when it's beautiful in Nashville. When it gets hot, I just water and maintain. But here, I'll occasionally pull weeds or some invasive bush honeysuckle or something like that, and just let it do what it's going to do.
Let nature take its course. So now we're kind of in, I guess, the main part of the garden. Is this an older portion, one of the places you sort of started?
This is where I started the garden, in this area here, and it's matter of fact, this area that we're standing where all the trees were when they cut the trees down for the property, and they were just pushed off down the hill.
So you've got big stands of things up here now after many years, plants that have reseeded themselves like the celandine poppy, and a beautiful stand of something blue over there across the garden.
That makes me smile every time I see that one. That's Calentia verna, or blue-eyed Mary. It's an endangered species here in Tennessee. It's an annual that just reseeds, and it just mixes beautifully with the other wildflowers. I just love it.
Well, I know that's kind of one of those holy grail sort of plants for all of us plant enthusiasts, but particularly for people who are interested in native plants. And I see a lot of other things around here too, not just perennials and ground cover type plants, but some really cool trees and shrubs like Carolina silverbell.
Well, the Carolina silverbell, I love the fact that it blooms really before the leaves come out. I love the bell-shaped flowers. You know, as the tree matures, it gets this real pretty striated bark, and it just reminds me of the Smoky Mountains. That's one of the main reasons I have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then sort of over here to our right, a really magnificent specimen of red buckeye. And this is an important plant for the hummingbirds, I understand.
That's the first thing that you see the hummingbirds go to, and this one's been very prolific. It's done really well here. I've had lots of babies that I'll take the seeds and just toss into the woods that come up. So it's a real easy one to grow.
Well, before we have to take leave of this beautiful garden, I wanted to quickly point out one more very large shrub that you have, and this is the Florida flame azalea?
Florida flame, the Austrinium.
Right, so this is a native azalea, one that grows naturally in our part of the world in the southeast. Unfortunately, people can't smell it at home, but the fragrance is incredible as well as its beautiful flowers. So for good understory planting, I would assume, because you have high shade here.
High shade, and again, what I love about this too, the butterflies absolutely love this.
Right, and it's an early spring flowering thing, so the first butterflies are out, and this is a real opportunity for them to start collecting nectar and being on the way to a good summer.
That's right.
Paul, I want to thank you for letting us come and and see your beautiful garden. I've had the good fortune over the years to see it many times, but I'm happy that everybody at home finally has had the same opportunity.
Thanks, Troy. Glad you could come.